So I'm waiting for a maintenance guy to come to fix my shower. And I feel like he's just going to knock on the door any second now that I've started recording. I guess we'll find out. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Health First Freelancer, and thank you so much for joining me today. This is only the second video on my channel, so I thought it would be smart to do a little bit of an introduction to me. Who am I? Why should you care? Etc., etc. And then I thought I would talk a little bit about my health journey and how I've dealt with chronic illness and how I've healed and gotten to where I am today. So if that's something you're interested in, stick around and enjoy the video. I do think it is a pretty good story, so let's get into it. My name is Amanda. I am currently a freelance health copywriter and business owner based in the Midwest of the United States. I started my freelance business in the infamous 2020 after 2.5 years of corporate drudgery, just trudging my way through the ranks and really getting absolutely nowhere. And then, on the tail end of the corporate drudgery in 2019, I had a health crisis that nearly killed me, but instead completely changed my life. Since then, I've been able to build a freelance business to 6 figures in annual revenue, and I work about 20 to 25 hours a week, and I pretty much have complete autonomy to work when I want, rest when I want, and generally live a health-first lifestyle. So that's where I am now. It's pretty freaking great. Along the way, I've experienced many mindset shifts, challenges, setbacks, leaps forward, triumphs, and I'm still very much learning and growing. However, I've also definitely learned a lot about business and freelancing and mindset and health and adapting to various circumstances in life since I overcame the health crisis and started my business. So that's some of the stuff that I'm here to share with you, especially how you can create a freelance business that helps you prioritize your health and feel better instead of a job that drains you and leads to a flare of your illness or relapse or burnout or worse. I've been there. I get it. We're doing the opposite of that. So that's what Health First Freelancer is about. And that's basically why I'm here. That's why I started this channel. Okay, great. So now that we've covered all that, let's dig into the meat of this video, which is my personal health journey, where it started, how I recovered, what tools and practitioners and things that I use to get better and get to where I am today, which is relatively healthy, happy, and thriving. It's a great place to be. So if we go back to not the very beginning, but pretty close to it. My personal health journey really began when I was about 12 or 13, and I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, which is an autoimmune GI condition. Basically the worst thing you can be diagnosed with when you're a teenager. It was really, really not fun. And after a few years of struggling with this condition, I will spare you the gory details. If you know, you know. I was put on an immunosuppressant medication that helped, control the symptoms and basically put me into remission, which lasted throughout high school and college. So I am very grateful for that period in time. But then after I graduated from college, other mystery symptoms began showing up that were outside of your normal UC type symptoms. Extreme fatigue. I was tired all the time. Brain fog, had trouble focusing, couldn't really retain information very well, all kinds of weird stuff. I mean, definitely mental health issues as well, a lot of depression and anxiety, which was probably like a constant really for most of my teenage years through college and so on, but I didn't have a grasp on the severity of it until it started getting a lot worse. And then I was like, oh, this is bad. Okay. And that was when we really get into it. So I wasn't really getting any answers from doctors, of course. So I started making a few changes of my own, like cutting gluten. out of my diet, which turned out to be a huge positive. And I'm still gluten-free, and I'll probably never go back, to be honest. Yeah, it was shocking how much of a difference it made in my mental health, especially. Not as much in like the gut and fatigue and other stuff, but the mental health was a lot better after I cut gluten out. But besides that, nothing I did like diet or lifestyle wise really made a huge difference in my health. So things were kind of stagnant for a while. And then at the end of 2018, my UC relapsed, ulcerative colitis relapsed. I went into a flare after 7 years of remission of being on immunosuppressant medication because my doctor told me I had to change medications because my liver was no longer metabolizing the current medication correctly. Like it was overloading my liver. So that was bad. And I had to change medications, but then I like immediately went into a flare. And that kind of kicked off this whole spiral, this whole downward spiral I'm about to tell you about. So, of course, I went on high-dose steroids, which is kind of the first-line treatment for ulcerative colitis or inflammatory bowel disease, whatever variety of it you have. And it helped a little bit at first, and then it quickly made everything 1,000 bajillion times worse. I tried basically every other drug there is for UC, injections and infusions, and nothing worked. Nothing helped. Nothing changed anything. I was still in the flare. This is, months at this point of the flare. And on top of that, I couldn't really even get off the steroids. Like decreasing the steroids was for some reason extremely difficult. Like I had these insane mood swings and extreme fatigue and just like these crazy unexplainable symptoms. Like I felt like I was going crazy every time I tried to decrease the steroids. And I was on like 60 milligrams of prednisone, which if you've ever been on prednisone, that is a lot. 60 milligrams a day is definitely high dose. And at the beginning, they were like, oh yeah, you can go down by 20 milligrams a day until you're just like off it in 3 days. And I tried that and like I almost died. I can't even explain to you the insanity that happened when I tried to do that. Yeah, it was wild. It basically felt like what I would imagine withdrawal symptoms feel like. I haven't had anything else to compare that to, but that's kind of what I imagined it would feel like. So since no other doctors could give me an explanation for why this was happening, much less fix the UC flare, I sort of self-diagnosed myself with secondary adrenal insufficiency, where basically the steroids were taking the place of the job that my adrenals should be doing by producing cortisol. And by taking the steroids away, the adrenals were having trouble sort of like turning back on, if that makes sense. This is a real thing that can happen. It just is not super documented in terms of like coming off of steroids. But as far as I could tell with internet deep dives and just like a lot of Googling and trying to understand biology, that was like the closest thing I could figure out to what was going on. So yeah, it was like my adrenals were like a car engine, like revving in the winter, trying to start and like just not being able to turn over and produce my own cortisol. Basically just like extreme adrenal burnout. It was really bad. And as you can probably imagine, on top of the flare and the existing fatigue, brain fog, and depression, it was excruciating. It's easily the worst experience I've ever had in my life. The mood swings were terrifying, honestly. And by the way, if anybody out there is a biology nerd and you can confirm or deny this self-diagnosis that I have, that I made of myself 5 years ago, I would love to hear about it. I would love to know if you can give me any support in this situation. Because truly, like I saw, my GI doctor, endocrinologist, therapist later down the line, and everyone was like, dunno, just hang in there. Like, keep doing the decreases. And I was like, cool, thanks, bye. So yeah, if you have any idea what was going on there, I would love to hear about it. So all this is happening in, late 2018, early 2019. Somehow in this whole process, I secured a new job at a marketing agency where I was going to be a digital marketing associate. Just kind of lowest man on the totem pole, learning stuff, and gonna make my way up in this agency. And yeah, it was like less than 2 months into this whole health saga, I had to quit my job. And that was very devastating. Basically, I lived at home, lived at my mom's house, and my whole life just became consumed by getting through each day, eating increasingly smaller list of foods that I could eat, and going to useless doctor's appointments, losing weight. I got down to like 98 pounds, and just scouring the internet constantly for what could be wrong with me, and decreasing my steroids by like 1 milligram a week, which was like barely tolerable. Yeah. This went on for like another 4 to 5 months, like February through July, basically. And by the time summer rolled around, things were real dark. It was really bad. I was basically not eating anything. I was incredibly depressed. And my self-appointed diagnosis at that time, having just basically spent all of my life researching the internet and trying to figure out what was wrong with me, was mold illness, which I still think is probably some part of the equation. But at the time, I thought it was like the thing that was killing me. And basically, I couldn't do anything about it because if it was coming from my house, the place where I was living in, and the place where I was spending all of my time, and I couldn't afford to go, I had nowhere to go, then like there was no point. Like, it was going to be impossible to recover from it if I was living in it and I couldn't go anywhere. But I'm nothing if not stubborn. And in between bouts of complete hopelessness and depression, I was researching and trying supplements to see if anything could just lift me a little bit out of the hopeless despair that I was living every day. And I decided to try what I now know to be a hilariously tiny dose of a choline supplement. Choline is the main ingredient in the neurotransmitter acetylcholine, which is the most abundant neurotransmitter in your body. You need it for a lot of things, but most importantly for the function of the vagus nerve, which is a nerve that runs from your brain like down all your major organs basically and helps them work. It also is in charge of your parasympathetic nervous system, which helps you be in like rest and digest mode instead of sympathetic or fight or flight mode. And basically, I was living in fight or flight mode because I thought I was dying. So I thought if I tried this supplement, maybe it would help reactivate my vagus nerve a little bit, increase some of the neurotransmitters that I was missing that would maybe help me a bit with kind of the depression, honestly, which was like the main concern at this point. So I started taking this little tiny supplement every day. It was like half a teaspoon, like nothing. I just was consistent with that for a couple of weeks. And after a couple of weeks, I realized some like switch flipped back on in my brain. I can't really explain it to you, but like I had just enough energy and mental bandwidth to start looking up naturopathic doctors in my area and make some calls and set up some consultations and see if I could find someone who could actually help me. And I found one. I found a guy who I really liked, and on the phone literally told me, yes, I can help you, which is the first time I heard that from any kind of medical professional during this whole saga. So I decided to go with him. And finally, we get to the turning point in my health journey where I actually finally start making progress and start getting better. So the first thing my ND, my naturopathic doctor, did was put me on high dose vitamin D, which I had experimented with vitamin D already, but I just wasn't taking nearly enough of it. He put me on like 50,000 IUs a day. Like your kind of standard dose for just like baseline, maintaining your baseline is 5,000. So I was extremely deficient. Actually, not as deficient as I could have been considering the circumstances, but still deficient. So he put me on, this super high dose. And within 2 weeks, a week, maybe even like a week and a half, honestly, I like turned into a different person. It was insane. The like crazy cloud of depression I had been living under for the last 6 to 9 months lifted, and suddenly it was like I could think more clearly. I could see what the obstacles were in front of me, but not be just completely overwhelmed by them. And it was like suddenly I knew that my situation was solvable. Suddenly I knew that I could recover. And that was truly a revelation at the time. Like, I can't overstate how wild and dramatic a change this was. So that was the first thing that happened. And then he put me on low dose naltrexone, which is still the only like real medication that I take currently for UC and Lyme to a certain extent. And after we started that, my flare stopped. Shockingly, I started to be able to eat more foods and put on weight. I started going for walks and doing yoga. The steroid decreases, because that's still happening, the steroid decreases became laughably easy. Like, as easy as they first told me it should have been when I was starting decreasing it. But I was still very cautious about that. But it was definitely like part of my life mission at the time to get off those steroids. It was one of the things keeping me going. So I was still making slow and steady decreases on that until I eventually stopped. And towards the last quarter of that year, 2019, I felt good enough to be able to take a part-time proofreading role at a local nonprofit. And it was really low stress and nice people to work with. And that was kind of the beginning of me starting to think about what I wanted to go back to in terms of a work environment. And once I started having just a little bit more money coming in, I started to think about freelancing and freelance writing and how I could possibly make that work as my full-time, quote unquote, real job. But it gets wilder, because by the end of 2019, I think like November of 2019, I started working with another practitioner who is also a local practitioner. I actually go to their clinic physically, who works with frequency and electromedicine treatments. And she used this system called OnDemed to kind of scan me and use the frequencies to diagnose me. It's sort of like a type of biofeedback. It's hard to explain unless you're in the field of it. But basically, she was able to diagnose me with Lyme disease. And it was like suddenly all of the pieces kind of fell into place as far as all the different symptoms I was experiencing, how no one could seem to figure out what was actually wrong, because Lyme is known as like the great imitator. It can, pretend, sort of masquerade as a lot of other different illnesses. And surprise, surprise, conventional medicine couldn't figure out what it was. So she diagnosed me with Lyme disease, and I started doing treatments with them, frequency medicine treatments, and different like detoxification protocols and stuff like that. And that was really what started to help me heal more fully and get on top of Lyme disease. And those treatments really changed my life. That was what started moving me in the direction of more comprehensive healing, way more than I could have done with just sort of diet, lifestyle, supplements alone. So that's the whole saga. It was, it's kind of funny. Like 2019 for me was the bad year. And then 2020 was like my slow ascending back into like a normal level of health, and then also being able to start my business. So for me, 2020 was like great. Like the pandemic was like the best thing that could have happened for me, because I got to work from home and figure out what it was like to be able to work from home in my own environment, like completely have control over my time and energy, be able to just like take a nap during the day and, you know, not being at an office where obviously you can't take naps. Or if I was going to take a nap, I had to like go out to my car and like hide from people. Sometimes I tell people I started my business just so I could take naps, which is not an untrue statement. And yeah, that brings us to the present day. So today I definitely still have struggles with Lyme and co-infections because Lyme comes with buddies, which is really fun. But overall, I'm a lot more resilient than I used to be. And I have a lot more control and just a general handle on my health than I ever did before. And honestly, I've had sort of, I don't know if you would call it a flare of Lyme disease, but like sort of relapses of Lyme. I've had a couple UC flares actually in the past couple of years since COVID. I think I got COVID and then COVID just messed up my gut so much that some stuff happened and I had a UC flare, but I was able to handle it basically. Within like a couple of weeks, I was able to get back into remission. I mean, comparing from 2019 to that, like a 9-month UC flare in which nothing was working, to being able to just like kind of figure it out on my own and get back on track within 2 weeks. I'd call that an improvement. And basically, most importantly, now I know that I have the tools and resources to regain my health whenever challenges arise. For me, it's not like I'm cured, and I honestly don't know that I'll ever be cured. I don't discount the possibility, to be honest with you, because I mean, even the idea of frequency medicine and electromedicine, like I never would have believed that was possible before I started doing it. And, you know, there's new technology and new tools and new resources being developed all the time for chronic illness, for Lyme, for autoimmune disease. So I don't discount the possibility that I could, you know, sort of totally fix things in the future. But for now, I'm just at a point where I'm stable and I'm moving in the right direction. And sometimes there are setbacks, and I just know what to do when that happens. And I always get back on top of it. And I feel like I'm in a place now where I know that I will never go back to that like terrible, terrible, deep depression, illness version of myself. Getting back to that point at this point, like knowing what I know now and having all the tools at my disposal that I have now, that does not feel possible to me anymore. That is really good. So that is the sort of long, short version of my health journey and the struggles that I've been through with ulcerative colitis and Lyme disease, and how I've healed and been able to get back to a good place and start a freelance business on top of that supports my health. I would love to hear your stories and any questions or comments you have about my journey in the comments below. So do make sure to let me know your thoughts down below. And in the meantime, if you didn't see my last video, it will be popping up on screen here somewhere, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye, everybody. Possible that my hair was just getting like crazier and crazier throughout that entire video, but I really don't care that much.